So this was an interesting practice, collecting our inspirations into a collage 2 minutes at a go. How did it go? What we're going to practice next, we're going to find out right now.
Welcome to the 2 Minute Practice Podcast.
Here, the hosts of the Lean Into Art podcast explore and encourage you to join us in trying all kinds of different creative activities that help us practice things related to making our art, exploring, growing in our business practice, and even trying things for a healthy lifestyle.
We'll talk about what we practiced recently, things we saw in the community, and then we'll highlight a new idea for us all to practice next.
2 minutes is a findable amount of time to try things. My name is Jerzy Drozd. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist.
And I'm Rob Stenzinger. I'm a UX designer, interactive maker, and teaching artist.
Good to see you again, Rob.
Good to see you, Jerzy.
So I teased it out at the top what our practice was. We were collecting inspirations into a collage. Do we care to explain any more about that, or just dive into where it came from?
I think let's just unpack it and see where it goes. There's a lot of there's always more to it than the simple the surface feature of like, all right, let's do this thing 2 minutes at a time, and then there's always more to it. So how was there more to it for you?
This was an interesting practice for me in that it felt very adaptable and mobile. And what I mean by that is that I decided that the tool I was going to use for my practice was the online browser-based app Canva, which is a browser-based design application, right? Where you can use stock photography and text and upload your own design elements and make all sorts of different kinds of graphics for the internet, but also you can make greetings cards and other kinds of material. It's like Quark Express, but on the internet, right? And I'm sending that message back to 1996 Jerzy, who would say, "What? You can't do that in Netscape Navigator." Yes, you can. You can.
You just dropped a whole group of floppies. You were trying to install it, and then you're like, "What?"
That's exactly right. Yeah,
I don't need these anymore. Yeah,
that's right. The daisy chain floppy disks. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, think of all those floppies. Good. At least I would guess 4 to 14 floppies.
Yeah, something like that. So anyway, so what that meant is that I could do it at my desk. I could also do it on the phone. I conducted some of my practices while I was in my backyard watering the garden. Right? I just had it's time to go water the garden. So I'm standing there with my hose going, like this, and I had my phone in my other hand. And I'm grabbing inspiration with a 2 minute timer. So it's it fit
that
into more
next level.
It wound up fitting into more places because of its adaptability in terms of what are you really doing? You're grabbing images off the internet that represent things that inspired you as a creative person, right? I didn't set up any constraints in terms of what media, right? But my inspirations tended to fall around comics. It was mostly comic stuff. Surprise, surprise. But there were some films and cartoons too. Yeah. Okay. It's
obviously it's not surprising. I am really curious though, the experience of grabbing those images. Is there anything worth highlighting? How the heck you did that? Right? Because I assume you didn't. Did you search inside Canva to do this?
No.
Okay.
I just I had a browser. I had Canva open, and then I had a browser window open on Google image search. And so I took 2 minutes. Some of the sessions were just image acquisition. Right? That's all I had time for. I'm looking up a few things, and the timer went off before I could get it imported into Canva. So some other sessions were importing them and arranging them in Canva. So the activities became very discrete in terms of fitting it into the 2 minutes and what I was actually doing. So there was the first handful of sessions were more of just gathering references into my downloads folder on my phone, right?
That makes sense. Okay.
And then
I'm just curious because that making that piece extra usable and efficient would be super cool. But it just, web browser tools, saving images into a folder is what I'm
And then when I was watering the garden, 2 nights ago, I had Canva open and I was uploading the images, and that took, a good 30 seconds or so. And then, I had another minute and 30 seconds left to quickly arrange them onto the canvas. And it's not a super artful collage, but it is a record of things that motivate and move me. There was also a little bit of time spent thinking about which specific comic am I thinking of. Like some immediately come to mind, and I can actually switch to my example here.
Oh yeah.
So, like, Spectacular Spider-Man issue 200 was a pivotal comic in my youth. Like, it was one that like really just like kind of threw me, and I felt like really arrested by it. And it was the combination of J.M. DeMatteis's writing and Sal Buscema's art, and also my relationship with the character Spider-Man. But that was a very important issue. It was easy for me to recall, okay, I'm going to get the cover of issue 200 of, Spectacular Spider-Man. Other things like Matsutsuki Yamakami's Lupin the Third series, I don't have a specific issue that I would say like this is the one. I just know the series in general. So like that became, okay, just find an image of the characters together in his style. One that took more time than I anticipated was Silver Age DC Comics. So Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen was one of my very first comic series I ever read, the 1960s ones. And I know it's had a pretty large impact on my worldview as a cartoonist. But finding a cover from an issue that I had, because I don't remember the numbers, that one became a little bit more difficult. So I spent, some of these images took me more time than others to find the exact image that represents, oh, I had that issue, or this is an image from a specific moment that moved me, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, that was a little bit of a hang up for me too.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, let's talk about your experience.
Well, okay, I had sort of the before the practice thinking about what I'm going to do with this, and because I didn't jump in right away, I started like late in the first week of the 2-week cycle, and that first part was like, how is this going to work? Because for some reason, I get hung up on collages, and and because of mood boards, because it reminds me a lot of mood boards, and they're very, it's a useful mechanism to say, here you go, look at this group of things with this rough intent and be affected by it. Now go make something, right? And that's like, or you can get extra specific about, oh, it's meant to have, this color palette, but this sort of, this other one has, we're supposed to, let's say you're using a combination of squishy cartoon characters and very sharp cartoon characters. So make sure you're borrowing different things, whatever it is. It's like, you got this palette of ideas, and I don't know. And I've never loved any tool I've used to make a mood board or a collage. So then I'm like, I better think about this just for a minute before I jump in, because I would have let multiple 2-minute practices by just staring at the wall like, where's this going to go? But I said, okay, just do the image search, grab the images. Don't worry about that. Because I thought I could just, snap photos of books on my shelves and whatnot. That'd be easy enough, right? But then I was like, a couple of easy ways. Image search way faster, so that got picked. And then but then that collage thing, and I thought, okay, guess what, I don't have it solved. Don't worry about it, just don't think about it, get the images.
Yep.
So I did.
So what I'm hearing in there,
please,
what
I
I'm
wanted
hearing
to
in
make
there,
sure you're layering in your experience on top of this too, back and forth, because
well, I also want to like repeat what I think I hear in my own words in order to check for understanding and also for inculcation and etc. But what I'm hearing in there is like the 2-minute constraint put you up against a previously unsolved, I don't want to say hang up, but maybe proclivity for thinking about mood boards. And it sort of compelled you in the end to abandon that quest out of it really made you like be efficient about like, well, what is the ultimate thing I have to ship here? Right? Is the content more important, or is the presentation more important? Well, presentation always counts, but maybe presentation can be dialed back in order to get content out, even if it's inelegant. That sound reasonable?
Yeah. very, very reasonable. It's because I thought it doesn't matter, right? The aesthetic of this collage isn't important. The information architecture of this collage isn't important.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, it could be, if depending on what this tool is for. Because again, if I'm meant to sort of retrace my steps about my intent for this image versus that one, and all, I could have a lot of different categorizations and arrangements. But I didn't. I said that, okay, I just need to get a bunch of images onto one canvas in the end. And what's really funny is I didn't pick Canva. I've been using Canva for everything lately. They should totally be a sponsor. And that's, something worth looking into at some point, because I have found a lot of really good utility for it. And I've enough to where I bought a license. And, but I ended up using something that I used Sketch app, which I haven't kept upgraded, but it still works. And Sketch app is sort of like a Adobe Illustrator competitor with a little bit of it's also for helping folks who lay out, interactive stuff. And it tries to do that so you can export assets really efficiently. And I've used it for laying out mini comics and all kinds of stuff. It's a pretty good app. But Sketch app, is that it?
Is that it? Is that not it?
I don't think so.
No.
It wouldn't. So this is a thing where I think it's only on Mac. So that's someone saying, I know a popular app. I'm going to show up as that. It's like going to a party. Like, who's famous right now? You know what? I'm going to put that on my name tag.
All right. Anyway. Well, let me see if this is it. Is this what we're looking for?
That is it. That's
okay.
It. Yeah, right.
Okay.
So this is actual Sketch app. You're getting to meet them, as opposed to like, some person dressed up as Sketch app. Like, oh, sure, I'm Sketch app. Hi, I just know all the sketches.
This is totally an aside, but it's funny, so it's worth going into. Is I just came across an article recently where it was like the most heinous sort of appropriation, or rather, store brand renaming of a product to align it closely to a popular name brand product, right? And so instead of like, instead of Dr. Pepper, it's Dr. Rocket soda. It's Kroger's Dr. Rocket. Don't you want to drink it? And the one that they had, when I've talked about it on the podcast before, is Panburger Partner, which was the instead of Hamburger Helper, it was Panburger Partner. And I bought that when I lived in Phoenix, and I kept the box for years because it made me so happy. Like Ann and I were like, well, if we ever decide to start calling ourselves partners instead of husband and wife, we'll go, this is my Panburger partner. And I actually found a YouTube video of a guy incensed. He was so angry that somebody would call a product Panburger partner. It's him screaming, leave Britney alone, into the screen, but about Hamburger Helper. Anyway, so yes, I showed you first, everybody, the Panburger partner version of Sketch app. But here is the proper Hamburger Helper version of Sketch app.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
It's there's a lot of good possible stories and adventures with the lookalike gangs out there. But or even sound alike. Anyway, the first one wasn't Sketch app. But Sketch app I've had for a long time, and I just was like, okay, I remember it does the whole distribute things vertically and horizontally quickly, right? And I'm like, I'll give that a try. And of course, when I did it, it looked like garbage. So then I ended up quickly, rearranging them just manually, fairly randomly. Anyway, that's and I suppose I'll actually show.
Here we go. Let me go to.
Okay, and so this is, the thumbnails I grabbed, just doing image search. And it's, again, after thinking through how am I going to do this, and then I did about 4 sessions of image, fetching, because I thought the other thinking through ahead of time was, what are the categories of things that really affect me and are part of the reason of like what I do, right? And so then there's things. I can zoom in a little bit. you know, the TurboGrafx 16, very influential game system for me. And a couple games from there, Bomberman 93. I actually, played Bomberman for a few years before that. There was this special bundle CD you could get. It was actually the first home-based CD-ROM system that you could get. It was before they were available for PCs and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of look at this fancy thing. And then when you play a game like the one that's spelled with a Y-S, it's pronounced East. So East Book 1 and 2, it was just epically huge, which is wild. And it had all these amazing soundtracks and then some kind of like, sort of animation put to music things that wasn't like, directly, it wasn't like fully a cartoon embedded in the game, but it was really super mind-blowing for the time. And it was, pretty fun action RPG. And and it's one that I played for so long because of having so much time as, childhood growing up and all that. But then, and then Devil's Crush. Those are huge. But then, of course, there's things like, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Play the heck out of that. It's a few years old now, but it's not as old as Bomberman, Devil's Crush, and Ys. But like, so games are on here, but also, Iron Maiden and Metallica, things from other eras of gaming, right? So, sure, when I was a younger tween on up to teenage years to my 20s and third that, because, Sonic Adventure, I bought the Dreamcast on its release date of, September 9th, 1999. And, I know a lot of people go up and down about Sonic Adventure as, it's not a good game, whatever, but like, I thought the narrative was amazing. It was first places where I saw you got to play as different characters and you went through the same boss fight, as the playable and then non-playable character back in, at different times. So like when you fought Botnik at Tails Workshop, and then you fought him as Sonic at first, you heard different dialogue than when you fought him as Tails later on. And it's just revealing two different, ways of looking at the world, right? And awesome, right? I was like, it's stuff I carried with me. Ghost Rider, I saw that, a comic on the shelf as a later teen, was number 18. It's this, it's this one with, it's a skull fire inside of a sweet metal studded leather jacket. Seriously.
Yep.
This was arresting. It was in my hands before I started thinking. I was like, I'm gonna buy this. So, and then I got to learn about Danny Ketch as Ghost Rider, and I was like, who the heck's Johnny Blaze?
Yeah.
That came later on. Johnny Blaze showed up in the series. Yeah. But anyway, so anime music, Dungeons and Dragons was hugely influential in my early childhood. The kinds of fantasy, painting and drawing, things I wanted to draw, my style of drawing and sketching and all that kind of stuff came from there. Understanding comics, hugely influential book. Before I really made comics, I was working on a game that I thought could be vastly infused with the language of comics, right around 2003 or so when I read that book, and then more recent stuff for me, My Hero Academia. Anyway, that kind of stuff. So a few books, a few movies, all that stuff mixed in, and that's what I did. And my gosh, one of my biggest things when I look at this is I just think of all the stuff that I'm like, oops, I missed a bunch.
Yeah, yeah.
Like this is super not representative of like all the things that I find are deeply resonant and my work is influenced by and stuff in different ways, in different media.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like what do you look at that, your list, and you're like, oops, I forgot.
Well, I don't want to say oops. I think I said good enough It's so I walked into this with an attitude of, this is going to be cursory. This is definitely, because 2 minutes at a go is going to, like, having done like real deep dives into my biography and my history for some other reasons recently. I was really in touch with how time consuming and intensive that can be. I mean, you've done this when you do like your yearly look back, right? It was like a yearly evaluation of like what happened last year. What do we want to do next year? I remember you did that. Was it 2 years ago where you did that like full audit of your?
It was a while back. Yeah. But experience inventory.
That's right.
Yeah. I've got a whole article about that. Yeah. That was exhaustive and a lot of work.
So that was like sort of on my mind when we first conceived of this exercise or this practice. So I said, okay, one is going to be cursory. I know it's not going to be fully representative of who I am. And I think that liberated me a little bit, because I think I felt an initial twinge of, oh, this is going to be a piece of art that represents Jerzy Droz, the artist. I'm like, oh, just put that aside for a second. You're not that important, kid. Let's just have fun with something, and let's be playful with it, and let's understand that it's going to be a cross section, by no means the whole of you. And the second thing I told myself is, let's follow the principle of put an object on the wall and respond to it with the next object you put on the wall. So, like, when you see behind me, when you're looking at my, I get a lot of comments about this wall whenever I meet people on Zoom. And like, there's a lot of stuff there. And I'm like, oh, wow, it looks so planned out. I'm like, well, it is and it isn't. It's like, I sort of like start with like, what's a really important thing to me. Like, for instance, this Battle Cat animation frame from Masters of the Universe. I'm like, boom, that goes there. All right, how do I respond to that? And everything else becomes a decision-making process of responding to the initial first move. So it's by no means strategic, and I didn't go at it that way. Like for mine, I just thought, okay, some are going to be larger than others, and I'll try to imply importance through size, but I'm not going to be even that worried about it, because some things would have to move in order to like maximize the space and get all of my images in there. So some images represented a broader swath of things. So for instance, there's the Colossus of New York that's in there, which is in the second row, first on the left. And that just represents my love of monster movies, like corny, weird, imaginative, and bizarre monster movies are one of my favorite things. Kim Possible's on there. Well, not Kim Possible per se, but representing that whole period of animation. Like the late 90s, early aughts animation period. I just used her as a placeholder for that. Some were very specific, right? Derek Kirk Kim is on there. And Derek Kirk Kim, I haven't told the story in a long time, but his book, Same Difference, was so powerful when I read it as a webcomic. It was the only time in my entire life I ever thought, maybe I don't have any business doing this stuff. Like maybe it's time for me to figure out some other line of work, because the best comic has been made. And there's no point in even trying after reading that. Like, it really gave me an existential crisis. Yeah. And I actually got to tell him that, and he didn't know what to do with that. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have told you that.
It's like hot potato with anxiety,
And it was years later. So I was like, no, I'm here. I'm at a festival with you. I made comics still. I overcame it. But I just want to say, your work was so profoundly powerful. Anyway, so yes, there's some things that are very specific. Crisis in Infinite Earths #3 is the book that I cite as being the one that made me decide that at that moment that all I'm going to care about from here on is comics. Other ones are more vague, like the Transformers and He-Man image captures represent like afternoon 80s cartoons. Yes, I think about Transformers and He-Man a lot more than others, but they sort of like are standing in for an entire range of stuff: Silverhawks, Thundercats, Pole Position, Saturday Supercade, et cetera. So yeah, I knew that mine was not going to be gorgeous, but it was going to be like, in 2 minutes, can I think of how much can I think of and how much can I grab?
Yeah, that is really great. I roughly landed on that, but then have just little pangs. It's not huge regret or anything, but just noticing, like, it's like forgetting to invite a friend to a party or something, where I'm like, Robotech's not there. What? Really?
Yeah, wasn't mine either. Yeah.
Snoopy,
and I didn't put any music in mine, right? There's like a lot of music that I have a lot of affection for, and stuff that like sort of stands as a fulcrum point of different developmental cycles of my life, right? Like George Harrison is like when I was 22, my God, George Harrison was all there was, all I thought about in terms of music. So things like that, I didn't put that in there. So yeah. Yeah, I it's sort of like preemptively forgave myself, I guess. And I think it was, again, because I had a lot of proximity to some deep dive research material on my own history it took a lot. It asked a lot of me. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I was set up for success there.
Let's have more fun than, worrying about being thorough and stuff. That's, yeah, good. It's pragmatic and I think pretty helpful. And overall, I'd say I ended up going there, but I don't have a recent deep dive that I've done like that. And yeah, because I understand the sting of it. Because after I did the experience inventory, I thought, yeah, I'm going to do this again. And I've never done it again.
No, as I'm exploring this, I'm hearing the words in my head that, like, for me, I'm constantly on a seesaw of having faith in myself that I can ship, and not having faith in myself in that I need to make sure that I don't let myself go down these primrose paths, right? There are ways that I can easily find myself lost because I get too excited and fascinated about certain things. So there's like another Jerzy who steps in. He's like the Bert to Ernie in this Jerzy dyad in my head, is that, like, he's like, okay, well, I know how you get when you get creative. So I'm gonna put up these orange cones here. You don't cross this line. You let that divert you. You go over there when you see the orange cones, So yeah, I almost feel like that's a lead into our topic, is this idea of, like, having faith in yourself and also not trusting yourself, and like how that interplay can help you accomplish creative. Or at least I move between those two modes a lot when I'm being creative.
Yeah, I wouldn't have put those words to it, but yeah, I think there's a lot of utility in that topic worth diving into. Maybe a creative work conversation, future episode.
That sounds like a plan. So how about we take a break and then we'll conclude our thoughts on this stuff that we're talking about and choose our next practice. We got to choose another practice.
Mm-hmm. So you do. All right.
We
get to. Yes.
Yes, we get to. We have the opportunity to engage with another practice. So how about I play some music while I do this? If this is helping you think and do useful creative work, a way to help this project, this show, is to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/leanintoart, or leanintoart.com/Patreon. They all go there. And you can support us for as little as $1 a month, or if you sign up for our $10 tier, you can participate in the monthly Lean Into Art Creative Labs, the accountability call, where a gentle deadline can help you show up to be, a little bit more productive, and you can share what's blocking you, what steps you want to take next in your next creative project in a safe space with fellow leaners. Another great way you can help the show is to buy the products we make, and the thing that I make that I hope you will buy is Boulder and Fleet Adventurers for Hire. When you're a small bird like Fleet, the world is a dangerous place. Sure, there are local constabularies in the villages and towns, but the wild spaces in between are governed by a single rule: might makes right. Bandits, fire skeletons, wizards, and all sorts of nasty supernatural and super scientific creatures lurk in the woods, ready to pounce on the helpless small fry. But Fleet is far from helpless. Plucky and ambitious, she's gone into business to make the world safer, one adventure at a time. And if she happens to become the most rich and famous adventurer in the bargain, hey, that's not bad either. Her partner is Boulder, a bear with a boatload of muscle and courage. Only problem is that he'd rather chat up the locals and have a good meal than punch the bad guys. In fact, he hates fighting altogether, complicating Fleet's plans for fame and fortune. Still, he's a bright light in an otherwise darkish world, so Fleet's glad of his friendship, even if it means having to convince him to go on adventures into her day planner. You can find this book and more books that I make at books.jdrozd.com. Rob?
And yeah, thanks, Jerzy. Another thing that you can check out, something that I make, is a blog. I am writing at interactive-storyteller.com very frequently. I'm wrapping up my daily practice after 100 days, but there'll be plenty of articles coming up ahead. podcasts. This is where the Polytechnicast lives. And you can read stuff like this article where I reflect on off-the-cuff clarity. And it's actually, from a bit of preparation where it's not really an accident to sound clear. And I dive into all kinds of things related to UX. I even celebrate things we make and lean into art, comics, all kinds of stuff. Go check out interactive-storyteller.com. Put it in your favorite RSS reader and you'll get lots of fresh creative articles in your reader. All right.
All right. Okay. So we got to choose what practice we get to do next. Let me go to our. We have a little bit of a bucket with some ideas that we've been kicking around. But what do you think?
Yeah, that is true. That is true. There's So it's always, it is helpful to have some kind of I don't know, nourishing list of helpful stuff, right? I mean, we all make lists and references and sources, stuff like that, plans. Anyway, so yeah, we have a little bit of a cue in the 2-minute practice. I mean, we generated, that was the first practice, if you remember. It was about thinking of what you would want to practice in 2 minutes.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Is that too meta?
No, that's very much us. That sounds like something we would do. Yes.
Yeah. And that is interesting as far as like, how do you connect with this? How could you make the most use of it? Like what it's almost, I mean, it's about getting intentional about what you'd want to, make this kind of thing about. And I think that, I mean, a lot of our intent as far as what we want, we knew that the practice of practicing was going to be a big deal, but then we've bumped into all kinds of interesting observations along the way that, things that sort of kinds of practices that we thought would be, yeah, we're going to just work that in because it'll be, we totally want to level up in business things and marketing things and stuff like that. But those practices, haven't been as easy to jump into, and we certainly don't go there as frequently as what I thought in the beginning.
No, we don't. And I think a takeaway that I have from that is that I think if we do another marketing one or business practice one, it needs to be so hyper granular, right? Something that I think about in my comics courses and when I train teaching artists is that I tell them, you can't be too specific, right? You can, it seems like, oh, well, I have to have, if it's an hour class, I have to talk about, anatomy, perspective, fabric folds, viewing angle, and, point of view, because it's all interrelated. I'm like, you can do an hour on how lines work, right? Let's just focus on lines. What do lines do? They show distance, they show emotion, they show shape, they show texture. Boom, you can go down the zillion rabbits. So now let's even get more granular. How about let's do an hour on how lines show texture. Don't think about close and far away. Don't think about contour and shape and volume. All we're thinking about is texture, right? So I feel like if we did do a marketing one, I would say, can we find a way to get like so hyper granular that what it looks like we're doing is super simple, but we're actually generating a lot of mapping of like our thoughts on this hyper specific aspect of it. Does that make sense?
It really does. I mean, one of the reasons to get specific is a little bit of, it's resonant with some of your observations from earlier in this episode where, having those constraints and, you've got the Bert and the Ernie of, sort of, you get to get more focused. You get to experience less stress over the ambiguity. Even if it feels freeing at first, it becomes like what quicksand was when I was growing up, like a dangerous trap. But it's not really, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Turns out. But I don't know. Consult your own references on quicksand. But sort of casual TV dramas and action shows, they lied. It's not that bad.
But yeah, it's like I think when we did some of our business 2-minute practices, one of the things that made it emotionally expensive for me was navigating all that ambiguity, right? Whereas if you said like, can you sit down and brainstorm in 2 minutes as many words as possible that represent how you think you meet the world? There's something, right? That's very it's more specific. I would say, can you narrow it even more? How do you meet the world as a designer? How do you meet the world as a cartoonist? How do you meet the world as like pick a specific lane? Even
if you could spice that up a little bit with how you meet the world and others meet you, right? Where so for the marketing, I think you think of the function of it, it's to help others become aware of what you do. And so like when I divide up my business tasks, I think of, when I'm making stuff, when I'm marketing stuff, and when I'm merchandising stuff. And marketing is getting the awareness there and the motivation to then, find it and do something with it. But the merchandising is making it effective when someone has made that choice, right? So it's like,
Rob, this is good. Yeah, you're thinking, okay. What I'm hearing and responding to is the idea of not brainstorming what I think I am, but what other people have given me as a reaction to me.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating. I have not done that.
Oh, okay.
No, I have not done that. I have not done any work in that direction of thinking about like how has the world received me in terms of comments, reactions, exchanges. I don't know. What do you think?
There you go. Mind that experience. Okay. I'm all for it. This sounds doable in a 2-minute sense because the prompt is what you just described. Like sort of generate a list of what you've heard and how the world responds to you and doing, what you care about doing. Something like that. I paraphrased it, but
no, that's great. That's great.
That prompt, and then just capture a list, sticky notes, note cards, whatever works.
I have a couple immediately that comes to mind as I have saved in my Google Photos essays that my students have written about me in other lessons at school. So like the parents were kind enough to give me the gift of like taking a picture of the actual essay and then email it to me. And in 2 of them, one of the things they're the first characteristic they say about me is he smiles and laughs a lot. I love that. Like that's the first thing I think of. Like, and I think about that. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Grown-ups don't give themselves permission to do that very much. And I bet that's probably like it stands out when I'm around like a 10-year-old and they say something that's truly funny and I actually laugh at it. But he smiles and laughs a lot. That would be one of the first things I'd put in my practice. Which that's a brainstorm. That's the beginning. That can turn into, okay, well, so maybe my presence could be defined as joyful or playful, right? We could take it and run with it. But the main idea for me, what I hope to get out of it is just collecting language that I haven't thought about. And what it also points to that I like is it goes to this idea of like, for a lot of people, we remember negative feedback a lot more readily and emotionally than we do positive feedback, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's been a while since I've read research on it, but it's the I cannot remember what it's one of the logical fallacies and cognitive biases, right? And I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, it takes and I can't remember. I'm totally in broad brushing this, but basically, if you get one bit of negative feedback, it takes like 5 to 8 times the positive feedback to sort of balance that out or what have you. And it just, I mean, if you think about, we're wired to look for danger, right? I mean, it's that has a function, but then as a, helping your creative business, it's not as much danger focused. So hopefully there's, this is a good way to just let the positive sink in. And that's what we're here talking about too, is like, let's gather a list. I want this to be about what you've heard that's positive, right? If you want to do go down the, face the Darth Vader that's actually you inside the mask or whatever, that's fine. But maybe make that a different exercise. Like let yourself go to what you heard that is the well met response that others have shared back with you.
Yeah, and I'm going to grab them all. One of the ones I got just yesterday on a painting of cats that I did was "I like it." Like that counts.
Right on.
All right. Well, thanks, Rob. I think we've got a thing to do, a practice to try, and I think it's gonna be a positive one. So,
all right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This is kind of businessy, but I don't think I think it's specific enough. So let's see where it goes.
All right. Well, then with that, I think it's time for me to hit the music, right? And we'll get out of here. And I'll say, let's all try to gather some kind of list of positive feedback we've received on things that we've made that we care about, or services that we perform that we care about. And remember, 2 minutes is a findable amount of time. Play along with our chosen practice, or hack the game. Do your own version of it. Put your own flavor into it, and choose your practice. Set a timer, and you can always share your experience and the work. The artifacts of your labor and your practice in the Lean Into Art Discord, which is at leanintoart.com/Discord, and you can share in the Challenges Quests channel. Rob?
We'll be back in another 2 weeks with the follow-up 2-minute practice and a fresh prompt for you to try.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.